ever asked yourself how big the Philippines is? Or what are the boundaries of the Philippines? Well, if you haven't asked those questions, this is your lucky day. Because today, I'm going to discuss the first article of the Philippine Constitution, which is the national territory. But before I formally start our lesson, let me first give you a fun fact. Did you know that the definition of the national territory is usually not found in the constitution of other countries? If you're not aware of this fact, take note of this. The framers of our constitution strongly believe that we must know our territories to avoid territorial disputes with other countries. That's our fun fact for this episode. Now let's discuss the national territory. It comprises of the following. First, the Philippine archipelago. Second, all other territories over which the Philippines has sovereignty or jurisdiction. This includes any territory that presently belongs or might in the future belong to the Philippines. And last are the internal waters. To better understand this part, let's break it down, starting from the three components of the national territory. First is what we call the terrestrial domain. This refers to the land, whether agricultural lands, forest or timberlands, mineral lands, and national parks under the sovereignty or jurisdiction of the Philippines. Second, the fluvial domain. This refers to the internal and external waters under the sovereignty or jurisdiction of the Philippines. And last is the aerial domain. This refers to the airspace above the land and water, excluding the outer space. To make it easier for us to remember this part, let's take note of this code. TFA. T stands for terrestrial domain, F for fluvial domain, and A for aerial domain. Again, the code is TFA. Next are the other areas included in the Philippine archipelago. First is the territorial sea. This is the 12 nautical mile zone from the low water mark from the sea. Second, the seabed, or the bottom of the sea. Third, the subsoil, or everything beneath the surface soil, including the mineral and the natural resources. Fourth, the insular shelves, or the parts of the islands that remain underwater. And last are the other submarine areas, or all other areas under the territorial sea. To make it easier for us to remember this part, let's follow this code. TSSIO. T stands for territorial sea, S for seabed, another S for subsoil, I for insular shelves, and O for other submarine areas. Again, the code is TSSIO. Now let's move on to the internal waters of the Philippines. Due to the vastness of the Philippine Sea and the archipelagic nature of the country, it did not follow the traditional basis of determining the country's boundaries. The Philippines, together with Indonesia and other archipelagic countries, introduced the idea of archipelagic doctrine on the International Conference on the Law of the Sea. To understand this doctrine, let's take a look at the Philippines. The Philippines is an archipelago. This means that it's a chain or group of islands. According to this archipelagic doctrine, the Philippine archipelago is considered as one integrated unit, instead of being divided into 7,107 islands. The outermost of the archipelago is connected with straight baselines, and all the waters inside the baselines are considered as internal waters of the Philippines. To make it easier for us to understand the internal waters, let's remember this code. ABCI, or ABCI. This means that the waters around, between, and connecting the islands of the archipelago, regardless of their breadth and dimensions, form part of the internal waters of the Philippines. Since we are on the topic of the national territory, let's talk about the territorial disputes specifically regarding the South China Sea territorial dispute, or for us, it's the West Philippine Sea. Do we have the right to stop China from building man-made islands and from fishing in our area? To answer this question, let's first discuss UNCLOS. UNCLOS is an acronym for the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The Law of the Sea was developed from the struggle between coastal states, which wanted to expand their control over the maritime area adjacent to their coastline. UNCLOS is the constitution for the world's oceans and seas. Under the UNCLOS, we have different imaginary lines or maritime zones to determine a country's maritime territory. Let's discuss these maritime zones one by one. From the seashore of the Philippines, we measure 12 nautical miles to determine its territorial waters. This is the area where the Philippines has sovereignty. This means that we have a complete ownership of these territorial waters. They are our properties, so we are allowed to do anything with them. Innocent passage through these territorial waters is also allowed. This means that foreign vessels can enter as long as they will refrain from engaging in prohibited activities, such as weapon testing, spying, smuggling, serious pollution, fishing, or scientific research. From the edge of the territorial sea, we measure 24 nautical miles to determine the contiguous zone. In this zone, the Philippines may exercise control to prevent unpunished infringement of its custom, fiscal, immigration, or sanitary laws and regulation within its territorial sea. Extending up to 200 nautical miles is what we call the Exclusive Economic Zone, also known as the EEZ. In this zone, ships and submarines from other countries can freely travel without any permission. However, this is under the condition that they are just passing by and not taking any resources. Under the UNCLOS, the Philippines has no sovereignty and only has sovereign rights over its EEZ. What do we mean by this? This simply means that we don't entirely own the EEZ. We only have sovereign rights. The sovereign rights allow the Philippines to control all the economic resources within its exclusive economic zone, including fishing, mining, and managing resources. According to UNCLOS, we can share our EEZ with other states in two conditions. First, foreign states must abide the laws of the state allowing access to its EEZ. Second, there must be an abundant amount of resources. Let's go back to the question earlier. Do we have the right to stop China from building man-made islands and from fishing in our area? Of course, the answer is a big yes. First, China didn't have an agreement with the Philippines when they built the man-made islands. Second, there are 105 million Filipinos, and the fish in this area is not enough to feed the whole country. And lastly, our constitution clearly states that the exclusive economic zone is exclusively for Filipinos only. Even if we don't have sovereignty over the entire EEZ, we have every right to defend our sovereign rights. It means we can still prohibit the Chinese from fishing in our EEZ, especially that they already have violated our rights. Now let's review the important concepts for this episode. First, the national territory. Second, the three components of the national territory. Third, the other areas included in the Philippine archipelago. Fourth, the internal waters of the Philippines. Fifth, the archipelagic doctrine. Sixth are the maritime zones. That ends our lesson on the national territory. Here is a preview of our next lesson. We'll learn about the Declaration of Principles and State Policy. Thank you for learning with us and see you in the next video.